The worst part wasn't the accusation. It was how casually it was said, like we were discussing the weather. We were halfway through dinner when my grandfather put his fork down. I remember the sound. A soft metal tap against the plate. Too small to matter. Except it did. "Mila," he said, not raising his voice. "Why are you still renting in Williamsburg? What happened to your studio on West 72nd Street? The room went tight." My mother blinked first. "Oh," that she said, smiling like this was simple. "She was barely an adult when you gave it to her. Caleb manages it now." It made more sense. I didn't speak. I couldn't. My brain kind of stalled. Manage it. Since when my name is Mila Bennett, 32 years old, Caleb was at the end of the table, pushing food around like none of this involved him. My father didn't look up, just kept cutting his chicken like he hadn't heard a thing. Grandpa leaned back, slow, measured. "Barely an adult," he repeated. "Caleb is younger than she is." Silence. The air smelled faintly like overcooked garlic bread. I swear I could hear my own pulse. Mom cleared her throat. "Edward, don't make this dramatic. We've been handling things while Mila's been busy. Busy. That word again. The responsible one. The strong one. The one who doesn't need help." Grandpa turned to me. "Have you seen the paperwork recently?" Paperwork. I shook my head, honestly. I hadn't thought about it in months. Maybe longer. He stood up. Just like that. "Finish your plates," he said. "We're going into the city." No one argued, not even me. And that should have been my first clue that something had already shifted without me noticing. We didn't drive straight to the apartment. Grandpa pulled over first, just parked on a side street like he needed space to think. "Did you ever give your parents authority over that property?" he asked. Authority, how I said. My hands were cold. They handled board emails sometimes. Stuff like that. He looked at me. Long. "Did you sign anything?" I hesitated. And then it hit me. 2 years ago. I said, "Mom sent something. Said it was temporary. For management. I was flying back and forth for that Austin contract. What kind of document, I don't know. It was electronic. She said it would let them deal with co-op paperwork while I was gone." Grandpa exhaled slowly. "Limited power of attorney." The words landed heavy. "I didn't think it was a big deal." I said, "I swear." "She said it was just so they could talk to the board, and you read it." I didn't answer. He nodded once. That was worse than yelling. That document would allow them to adjust title, refinance, leverage equity. My stomach dropped. They wouldn't. He didn't look convinced. "You trusted them," he said. "That's not stupidity. That's family." I pressed my palms into my thighs. How far does that kind of authority go? He put the car in drive. "Far enough," he said, "to make tonight uncomfortable." And that's when I realized this wasn't about managing mail anymore. Looking back, it wasn't subtle. I just didn't want to see it. "You're wasting your talent here," Mom kept saying. "New York will always be here. Go build something bigger." Dad would add, calm and practical. "Austin's booming. Take the 9-month contract. Caleb can stay in the studio so it's not empty." Not empty. That was the word. Caleb called me one night. "I'll just crash there while you're gone. It's temporary. 3 months." I said, "Max, relax." He laughed. "You're not even using it." That one stuck. Before I left, Mom emailed the document. "Just sign it so we can talk to the board if anything comes up." I signed it on my phone at the airport. I didn't read past the first paragraph. I trusted the header. Temporary Management Authority. That sounded harmless. While I was in Austin, Caleb started texting like he lived there. Changed the Wi-Fi into my name. Easier billing. Board wants updated contact info. I put mine down. Had to fix a plumbing issue. Used the apartment account. Apartment account. Since when did we have one? When I came back for a weekend, my key worked for the building, not for the door. Caleb opened it from inside. "You should text before coming," he said, like I was interrupting something. The place smelled like cheap cologne and takeout. My suitcase felt stupid in my hand. You changed the lock, I asked. It's a smart lock, he said. More secure. Secure from who I didn't fight him. I told myself it was easier not to. Tell me something. Have you ever stepped into your own place and felt like a guest when we reached the building? I braced for noise, music, strangers, something reckless. Instead, the door was half open, low voices, controlled, almost formal. Grandpa didn't hesitate. He stepped inside like he still owned the world. Caleb stood near the window in a pressed shirt I'd never seen before. Holding a glass of wine he clearly wasn't drinking. Two men sat at my table with folders open and legal pads in front of them. Not kids with startup dreams. Grown men. Careful eyes. As majority title holder, Caleb was saying, I executed a refinance of $365,000 to unlock equity for expansion. One of the men adjusted his glasses. We reviewed the lien record. It shows joint tenancy established 2 years ago. My stomach dropped. Grandpa's voice cut through. Joint tenancy requires lawful authority. Under what instrument was that executed? The men turned. Caleb's jaw tightened. Through a limited power of attorney, fully notarized, I felt heat rise in my chest. For management, I said. Not for ownership transfer. The second investor flipped a page. The document grants broad financial discretion. Broad. That word. Grandpa stepped closer to the table. Discretion does not equal self-dealing. The first investor looked at Caleb. Was the primary owner informed of the refinance prior to underwriting silence? Caleb set his glass down carefully this time. It benefited the asset. It benefited you. I said. He met my eyes. You weren't using it. There it was. Simple, clean, terrible. The older investor closed his folder. We require clear, uncontested title. Until that's verified independently, no funds move. They stood. Calm, professional, no drama. When the door shut behind them, the apartment felt smaller. Caleb looked at me like I'd ruined something sacred. You didn't need it, he said again. And for the first time, I understood that this wasn't about money. It was about who he believed deserved to own security. Grandpa said he'd wait downstairs. He didn't look at either of us when he said it. The apartment felt different after the investors left. Quieter, like it knew something had shifted. Caleb stood by the counter, staring at the sink. The smell of burnt espresso hung in the air. You didn't have to do that, he said. Not loud, not angry, just tired. Do what I asked. Stop you from pledging my home. He exhaled slowly. You made me look reckless. You refinanced $365,000 without telling me. I had authority. For management. For financial decisions. He shot back. It was written that way. I hesitated. Did you even ask what that meant before you used it? He laughed, but it didn't sound amused. Do you think I wanted this? What did you want? Caleb. He rubbed his face with both hands. The company failed. I owed $200,000 in personal guarantees. Vendors were calling every day. Dad said this was the cleanest way to stabilize things. Dad said he didn't deny it. You could have told me, I said. And have you say no, he snapped. You always say no when it's risky. Because it's my risk. He looked at me then. Really looked. You've always been the stable one. The safe one. Mom says you don't feel things the way I do. That hurt more than the money. So, I'm steady, I said quietly. And that made me available. He didn't answer. I realized something in that silence. He didn't think he was stealing. He thought he was reallocating. And that scared me more than anger ever could. Rachel didn't offer coffee. She didn't soften her voice. That told me enough. She slid a printed copy of the document across the desk. Read the highlighted section. I scanned it. The agent may exercise full financial discretion, including encumbrance, refinancing, and adjustment of title, if deemed beneficial to the principal. My throat tightened. Full financial discretion. You initialed every page, Rachel said gently. It was notarized. So that's it. I said, they could do anything. Not anything, she replied. They cannot engage in self-dealing. They cannot use your assets primarily for another party's personal debt. Grandpa folded his hands, and adding Caleb as joint tenant, Rachel nodded. That's where it gets complicated. The power of attorney allowed title modification, but if the modification primarily benefited him, not you, that's breach. I leaned back. The lender didn't question it. They verified the recorded power of attorney and the deed transfer. She said, from a banking standpoint, the refinance of $365,000 was procedurally valid. The additional secured line of $140,000 followed standard underwriting. So the paperwork is clean. I said, yes, Rachel answered, but intent may not be. I looked at the signatures again. Mine at the bottom, confident, careless. What if a judge says I should have known better? Rachel held my gaze. Then we argue that trust within a family is not blanket permission for extraction. The word extraction landed hard. For the first time, I understood something. This wasn't about proving they had power. It was about proving they misused it. I didn't sleep that night. I kept replaying one line in my head, you signed it. The next morning, I went back to the studio alone. The place smelled faintly like stale coffee and something metallic from the lock they drilled out. Caleb wasn't there. I opened my laptop at the kitchen counter. I started pulling everything. Old emails, texts, bank notifications I'd ignored. There it was. Dad emailing Mom use the authority while it's still clean. Before annual board review, another one. Mom to Caleb. She doesn't need every detail. It's family. I took screenshots, sent them to Rachel. She called within minutes. This helps. How I said. It still says I authorized them. You authorized management, she said. Not extraction for personal debt. They'll say it benefited the family. And we'll say it benefited Caleb. I paced. He owed $200,000 in personal guarantees. That's not maintenance. That's rescue. Rachel paused. You sound different. Different how? Less shocked. More focused. I looked around the apartment. My apartment. The one I let them rearrange because I didn't want conflict. I'm done being the reasonable one. I said, good, she replied, because reasonable doesn't win fiduciary cases. I hung up and kept digging. Every email, every timeline gap. They built this plan slowly? Fine. I can build something too. Tell me at what point do you stop being the bigger person and start being the problem? The courtroom felt colder than it needed to be. Paper stacked neatly. Voices kept low. No one raised their tone. That almost made it worse. Caleb sat a few feet away. He looked thinner. Mom held his hand like he was still 12. Dad watched the judge. Not me. Rachel stood first. Your Honor, the limited power of attorney granted management authority. It did not authorize using the principal's equity to satisfy $200,000 in personal guarantees unrelated to the property. Defense counsel adjusted his glasses. The document expressly grants full financial discretion, including refinancing and title adjustment. The refinance of $365,000 was legally underwritten. The additional secured line of $140,000 complied with lending standards. The judge looked at me. Ms. Bennett, did you read the document before signing? No, I said. I relied on my parents' explanation. Defense stepped forward. Reliance does not void consent. Rachel didn't move. Consent does not eliminate fiduciary duty. Agents cannot prioritize one child's failing venture over the principal's asset protection. Dad finally spoke. We believed it would strengthen the property long term. Rachel responded calmly. There is no evidence of reinvestment into the property itself. The judge flipped through the exhibits. Was Ms. Bennett notified prior to the refinance closing? Defense hesitated again. No, Rachel said. She was not. The judge's pen paused over the page. Lack of disclosure weighs heavily in fiduciary analysis. No one smiled. No one relaxed. But for the first time, the argument wasn't about whether they had authority. It was about whether they abused it. Rachel called the next afternoon. They want to settle, she said. Of course they do. Caleb transfers full title back to you. The refinance gets unwound. Your parents avoid further damages if you drop civil conspiracy. I leaned against the kitchen counter. The place was quiet for once. And the $200,000 he owed, I asked. Structured repayment plan, court supervised, so they walk away. Not exactly, she said. They lose authority over anything you own, permanently. That part hit harder than the money. Mom called me an hour later. You're going too far, she said. This is your brother. He leveraged $500,000 without telling me. He was desperate. So was I. I said, I just didn't steal from family. She went quiet. That was new. You're breaking us, she whispered. No, I said. You did that when you decided I wouldn't fight. After I hung up, I sat on the floor. I remembered teaching Caleb how to ride a bike, him crying when he fell, me telling him he'd be fine. He wasn't fine. But that doesn't make this mine to fix. Tell me, when does loyalty stop being love and start being self-destruction? The settlement was finalized 3 weeks later. No celebration. No speeches. Caleb signed the deed transfer with a steady hand. He still didn't look at me. Mom dabbed her eyes with a tissue she'd folded too neatly. Dad asked Rachel about the repayment schedule, as if he were reviewing loan terms at a bank. It's complete, Rachel said when the notary stamped the last page. Complete didn't feel victorious. It felt like something had been cut loose. Outside the courthouse, Caleb finally spoke. I never thought it would end like this. It ended the day you decided I didn't need to know, I said. He nodded once. That was all. Grandpa walked beside me toward the car. You'll stay in it, he asked quietly. Yes, I said, but differently. A week later, I transferred the apartment into an irrevocable trust with myself as sole trustee. No shared authority, no open permissions, just clear lines. Mom sent one more message that night. We love you. I believe that. I replied, but love doesn't replace responsibility. If I could say one thing to anyone who thinks paperwork inside a family is unnecessary, it's this: trust is not a substitute for clarity. Affection does not protect assets. And silence can cost more than conflict. The balcony light is on tonight, not as a signal, just as a reminder.